I would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the City Governance Committee meeting of the 16th of June 2021, and I declare the meeting open at 9:48, and apologies for being a couple of minutes late. I would like to advise meeting attendees that this meeting is being publicly webcasted and audio recorded this morning. As the Local Government and Committee Meeting Code does not have provisions for the recording of the confidential discussions at this time, a motion has been resolved before we can proceed with confidential audio recording. I note that the proposed motion will be as follows: that in accordance with 7.11A of the Local Government and Committee Meeting Code, the provision of live streaming set out under section 12.3 of the Meeting Code be suspended for the duration of the closed sessions of the City Governance Committee meeting held on the 16th of June 2021 for the purposes of audio recording the closed sessions for Council's internal confidential use only. And number two, that the confidential audio recording of the closed sessions of the City Governance Committee meeting held on the 16th of June 2021, as detailed in clause 1 above, be deemed confidential and be treated as such in accordance with sections 171 and 200 of the Local Government Act 2009, and the recordings remain confidential. Is there a mover for the motion? Councillor Murphy has moved the motion. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Bradley has seconded. Do any councillors wish to speak to the motion? No. I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried by the majority or by Councillor Hall. How do you vote?
Against.
Thank you. I note that we have received a leave of absence from Councillor Russell due to medical leave and Mayor Power due to personal leave. Are there any other further leave of absences to consider? No. There being none, the motion will be as follows. Up on your screen, that Councillor Russell and Councillor Power be granted a leave of absence in accordance with section 5.3C3 of the Local Government and Committee Meeting Code. Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Fraser has moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murphy has seconded. Do any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Bradley, did you want to speak to the motion? No? Okay. I'll now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you. I will now refer to item 4.1, and I will ask the Finance Manager, Ms Caroline Bugg, to please enter discussions. But before we open discussion on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare this morning? No. There being none, I will now refer to Ms Bugg to open public discussion. Go for it.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read. The item 4.1 is the monthly executive financial report for the period ending 30 April 2021. Just like to note that the April financial report reflects the second budget amendment and does not reflect the recently adopted final budget amendment. The May report will reflect the most recent budget amendment adopted by Council. The report, just briefly, the report shows that we continue in a strong financial position. I do foresee that there will be an uptick in expenditure as we close in on financial year end. There are no significant risks that have been identified for the remainder of the financial year. In relation to the operating revenue, it continues to trend above budget year to date. The main drivers are listed in the report on the second page. The final budget amendment has recognised an adjustment in the operating revenue. The operating expenditure is above budget by just over $2 million. However, we note that this is a minor variance overall of being less than 1% of year-to-date expenditure. The rates and charges are tracking well, with a small reduction in property owners that are on hardship arrangements in comparison to the same time last year. And our sundry debtors remain fairly constant month to month, with the two major debts noted in the report being addressed through consultation and due process. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'll now open the floor for any discussion from the councillors. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Bradley?
It's through the Chair, Councillor Wilcox. It's more of a statement, really, rather than a question. Operating surplus of over 15 million, nearly 16 million. That's pretty good. Well done.
Any Thank you. Any further questions or comments from anyone? No? Is there a mover for the report's motion as displayed? Oh, sorry. Oh, are you moving the report? Sorry. Is there a mover for the report on the screen? That is Councillor Murphy. She has moved. Do I have a seconder for the report? Councillor Stamp has seconded. Do any councillors wish to speak to the motion? No. I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you. That was very quick. That marks the end of the Finance Manager's report this morning. Is there any general business as the Finance Manager? No? Do you have any for us? No? Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, and Miss Bug will actually be staying here, and we're actually going to refer to item 5.1, and we're going to ask Mr. Nick Maguire to please come forward and enter the discussions. Before we open discussion on 5.1, do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare? Councillor Hall.
Sorry, I'd like to change the way that I voted on the opening motion. I voted against. I was actually meant to vote for
For which one?
the confidential.
Oh, for the confidential.
Yeah.
For the recording. We don't believe we can go back and change it
Okay.
at this point.
All right. Well, it's been said.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hall. I note that 5.1 is confidential, and I note that it is considered necessary to take this discussion of this report into a closed session as it includes information that is commercial in confidence. Do any councillors wish to move into closed session for this item? Thank you. Councillor Kransky would like to move us into confidential. Yep, thank you. Councillor Bradley has seconded that motion. All those in favour of moving us into confidential, please raise your hand. Thank you. Councillor Hall, how do you vote?
Against.
Are you sure?
You're against.
I'm very sure.
Okay. The motion has been carried. The meeting is now closed to the public. Please be advised that this meeting is now in confidential session, and therefore the recording of this meeting will be suspended until it reopens. Thank you. Perfect. We are back being webcast. Lovely. There should be a motion coming up onto the screen in just a minute. All right. Is there a mover for the motion that is on the screen? Councillor Karansky has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Raven has seconded that. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? No. I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Apologies. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you. That marks the end of the Community Services Manager's report. Is there any general business? Gosh, I'm having a tongue twister today. Sorry. Is there any general business for Mr. Maguire? No. Do you have any for us this morning? No. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mr. Maguire. I will now refer to today's first late item, which is item 6.1. And Anita White is joining us this morning to enter discussions. Before we open discussions, do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare? No? Perfect. There being none, I will now open discussion to Ms White. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Good morning, councillors. The report I'm presenting today is seeking an exemption from Council's bank guarantees and sureties policy in respect of the waste collection services contract to be entered into by Council. I will take the report as read, however wanted to raise the following points. Council's bank guarantee and sureties policy provides that any bank guarantees provided in respect of our contracts do not have a termination date. It is considered that, in respect of the waste collection contract, it would be appropriate to have a termination date on the bank guarantee that is 12 months after the expiration or termination of the contract. We've sought legal advice which has confirmed that this is sufficient and appropriate for this contract. The report seeks an exemption to the policy for this particular contract, which I'm advised is not Council's standard form of contracts, but one which has been negotiated specifically in respect of this tender. Councillors should note further that the Administration and Finance branches will be having further discussions regarding the policy and whether that requires amendment or whether it's appropriate that on an ad hoc basis we would seek to apply an exemption as we are today. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I have Councillor Lane and then Councillor Bannon. Did you want to ask? Okay. Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, Ms White. I know that you wouldn't come here lightly asking for this exemption, and I understand that the legal advice that you received warrants it, so thank you very much for explaining that. It was my only question was around have we sought legal advice on whether this would, need to happen to move forward, so thank you.
Any further questions for Ms White? No? All right. Is there a mover for the motion that is displayed on the screen? Councillor Bannon has moved the motion. Lovely. Is there a seconder for the motion that is on the screen? Councillor Raven has seconded that motion. Would anyone wish to speak to the motion? I will now open the floor to vote. Please raise your hand if you're in favour. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That marks the end, I think, of Ms White's report. Does anyone have any questions, general business for Ms White while she's here? No? Lovely. Thank you so much. I will now move on to the next item. Thank you. It is late report 6.2, and I would ask People and Culture Manager Ms Kim Bryan to enter the discussions down the front. And just while we're waiting, before we open discussions on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare? No? Good morning and welcome. This is your first time up the front, isn't it?
Yes, it is, mate.
Well, over to you to open discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it is my debut, and as such, I needed help with the red button, but here we are. Good morning, councillors. The purpose of the report today is to seek approval to commence the recruitment process of a Chief Executive Officer, as per the guidelines that are attached to your paper this morning. The position of CEO is currently vacant and the role is filled by Silvio Trinco in an acting capacity. I take it that you have read the papers this morning, but I just wanted to touch on the recommendations. that a recruitment panel be formed. It is proposed that that panel consist of the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, 2 councillors which are appointed, and an independent panel member. That this panel be given the delegated authority to engage an external recruiter who's experienced in local government recruitment to assist with the recruitment process. And that the Director of Organisational Services be requested to identify suitably qualified independent external members that can come to the recruitment panel to make an assessment and recommend an external independent member. And the recruitment panel present a report to Council with the preferred applicant or applicants for the appointment of the Chief Executive Officer. Within the guidelines, you would have noted that there are several steps involved in recruitment of the CEO, and the recommendations just touch on a summary at high level. All of the steps will be completed in accordance with the guidelines. That is what I wanted to present in the first instance, but I'll hand back to Councillor and to the Chair in order to conduct a process for the nominations of councillors who will form part of the panel. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Ms Bryan. Councillors, you will note that in clause 1 of the recommendation, it relates to the formation of the recruitment panel. As per the CEO recruitment and onboarding guidelines, the Mayor and Deputy Mayor must form part of this panel. Clause 1 will be amended to reflect this. Additionally, at least 2 other councillors must also form part of this panel. The recommendations must also be updated to reflect the names of those councillors. Are all councillors agreeable that there is a total of 2 councillors? I believe we've discussed this and we're agreeable to that, in addition to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor. The Deputy Mayor sought expressions of interest last week to form the panel, and those nominations closed on Friday, where we had 4 nominations from councillors. And the 4 councillors that nominated were Councillor Bradley, Councillor Stamp, Councillor Fraser and myself to form part of that panel. As the recruitment panel calls for 2 councillors only, I will now call for confirmation of nominations process to be conducted. Prior to the commencement of this process, do any other councillors have a question for any of the councillors that have declared an interest in sitting on part of this panel? No? All right, there being no further questions, the corporate meeting staff will now hand out slips of paper. I remind the committee that the following councillors have declared expressions of interest. You have Councillor Bradley, Councillor Stamp, Councillor Fraser and myself. On the slips of paper, you will be required to circle only 2 names of the councillors that you would like to nominate. Your nominations will then be collected and counted by staff, and the 2 councillors with the highest number of nominations will then be considered for placement on the recruitment panel. Just bear with us if you're watching online or watching or listening while we just go through the process. The staff will now just count the vote.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question just while the ballots are being counted? What happens in the event of a tie?
In the event of a tie, we will have a second ballot with just the names of the councillors that have tied to vote from.
And just for the record, how is Councillor Jeremiah transmitting his vote?
Councillor Jeremiah has voted online via Teams with the corporate meeting staff.
Excellent, thank you.
The outcome of the confirmation of nominations is for Councillor Stemp and Councillor Wilcox, myself, to join the recruitment panel. Meeting staff have amended the clause 1, which is now shown on the screen. The amended recommendations are now displayed, and I will now open the floor to councillors for discussion. Is it Councillor Lane?
Thanks very much through you, Madam Chair. Can I please have the numbers of that ballot result? Thank you.
Councillor Bannon?
I'd like to say congratulations. I think you two ladies do a great job. I think you're very fair and even with it, and we look forward to moving on with it all.
Thank you. All right, we had 2 votes for Councillor Bradley, 3 votes for Councillor Fraser, 9 for Councillor Stemp, 6 for Councillor Wilcox, and 1 person abstained. Any other questions? Comments? Beautiful. Do I have a mover for the motion as displayed on the screen? Thank you, Councillor Bannon. Do I have a seconder for the motion that's on the screen? Councillor Raven has seconded. Do any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No. I will now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you. I note that due to social distancing reasons, not all managers or staff could attend today. That being said, does anyone have any general business for Ms Bugg or for any other staff this morning? No? That completes our agenda for today. Just before I close, I would like to wish Councillor Bradley a happy birthday for last week. So if you see her out, please say happy birthday. And today is actually my birthday, so please be kind and please say happy birthday to me if you see me out and about today. I declare that the City Governance Committee meeting of the 16th of June is concluded at 10:22 a.m. Thank you very much.